New SEC filings indicate House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, along with other members of Congress, have traded individual stocks in the lead up to grants that were federally approved for the very companies that they're supposed to be regulating and legislating. Now, this is something that became an issue to the lead up of the pandemic. We were informed that the Senate had a closed door briefing on the severity of the pandemic early on in 2020, before the general public knew the details. And during that time, you had several senators trade stocks, individual stocks, like tech stocks, for instance, which led to quite a bit of, quite a bit of a win in the stock market. Let's just put it that way. Now, the latest information shows just how much or to what extent these lawmakers, not just in the Senate, but in the House, use their inside knowledge to make decisions about the individual stocks that they were invested in. So there's a great Twitter account that gives you all of the details, kind of updates you as we learn more and more from these SEC filings, called Unusual Whales. And it comes with the receipt, so you guys can check that out as well. And the account argued that Pelosi just exercised $10 million in Microsoft shares on March 19th. Microsoft then launched a $22 billion military deal. She sits directly on relevant committees. And just to show you those receipts, you can see exactly what she was willing to purchase right before that contract was announced for Amazon. Again, we're talking about a $10 million contract. Obviously, it's gonna be helpful to that company and it's going to increase the price of its shares. Pelosi bought about $10 million of its shares before that deal was launched or announced publicly. Now, I have other examples to share with you as well, including on January 22nd, Congressman Mo Brooks and Ed Perlmutter and Mike Conway all bought Pfizer stocks in June and July, right before the US government signed a $1.95 billion vaccine contract. August 5th, US government announces $1 billion COVID vaccine contract with Johnson & Johnson. Congressman Kevin Hern, who sat on the House Committee on Budget, and Carol Miller, who's on the Oversight and Reform Committee, purchased J&J stocks in July. March 18th, I mean, the list goes on, guys. Former Congressman Greg Gianforte purchased up to $1 million in GlaxoSmithKline stocks, which is, by the way, up 25% at the 2020 peak. The company eventually signed a contract with the United States government through Operation Warp Speed. And of course, that was on July 29th when the US government announces a $2.1 billion deal with Sanofi and GlaxoSmithKline for vaccine development. And I'm gonna give you one other piece of data to look at that I think is incredibly relevant, because it shows you the extent to which these members of Congress are trading as they're making decisions about the very individual companies they're making decisions about, right? Like, or making legislative decisions about, I should say. So take a look at this fun graph, which of course shows you that Nancy Pelosi has traded the most, maximum investment in terms of the amount of money she had invested in the market. So it's obviously well past $20 million, but it gives you a sense of how broken the system really is. Like, money in politics, corruption, that's definitely an issue. But that doesn't do away with the other ways in which our political system is broken. And to have members of Congress invested in either personal businesses or individual stocks essentially undermines our democracy. Why would they do the right thing and represent the best interests of the American people when they can make a buck, right, by making decisions that help the share prices for these private companies? But Woz, this is something that infuriates me, it enrages me, but it appears that this behavior, for the most part, is legal.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about this whole thing. And a lot of times you and I might be talking to some of our normie friends who are not engaged in politics. And one of the reasons they'll say stuff like the corrupt duopoly in Washington. And oftentimes, people like us who pretend to be experts and nerds about it just scoff at the idea that Republicans and Democrats are at all alike. I think we could cite the resurrection of Jim Crow in Georgia just as one specific example of the differences between the two parties. Excuse me. But when it comes to the tippy top, when it comes to kowtowing to the corporate power of this country, when it comes to just straight up, outright corruption, it's both parties. There's no two ways about it. Like, you can't tell me that Nancy Pelosi was just thoroughly investigated the merits of doing business with Microsoft, right? Like that she just completely was just, she was unaffected by how much money she might herself be able to make from the deal. She just never took any of that into account. She just went in and said, who would be the best person to get this contract from the United States government? And of course, I'm just gonna pick the best people on the merits, not my own individual enrichment. How can you possibly believe that to be the case? It's impossible. You just have to be an idiot to think that these people are acting on our behalves in our best interest and not in their own when this much money's on the line. When Nancy Pelosi can invest $10 million of her own money into this. This is just one transaction. So that just shows you the measure of her personal wealth. And honestly, it shows you the interest that she is most clearly aligned with. It's not with people like you and I. It's not with the American worker. It's with the corporate interest, the corporate power, the oligarchy class, for lack of a better term. And it's quite sickening, man. This lady is, she's one of the three most powerful Democrats alive. And she is wholly corrupt. It's craziness.
No, I mean, let's put that graph up again because I want to be clear about what this graph represents. These are the top House representatives with the most investments purchased in 2020. And I mean, I feel bad for Carol Miller. Poor Representative Miller, right? Like being included on a list. Like, look, I think they're all in the wrong. They shouldn't be invested in individual stocks, period, right? So I'm being sarcastic and saying poor Carol Miller. But I mean, you compare her investments to Nancy Pelosi's, and I mean, it's kind of laughable to include her on that list, right? I mean, Nancy Pelosi beats most of them by a mile, and then you have Susan Dilbein as well. But yeah, this goes to the question of what the right strategy is for progressives. And I didn't want to get into it yesterday. We had so much on our plate, but there are no saviors in Congress. And it's not about whether individual members of Congress are good people or bad people. Are they looking out for us? Do they care about us? None of that matters. All of the incentives are in the wrong place. Yep. And really, I mean, what are they gonna do? Like, are they afraid of organized labor? No, because we don't have organized labor. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think that most of the focus that's been placed on electoral politics has been, and don't get me wrong, electoral politics is important. That should be part of the strategy. But putting all of the eggs in that basket, I think is short-sighted and is gonna continue being incredibly disappointing because again, all of the incentives are on the wrong side. With that said though, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand did pass some regulations on this. This was in 2013, but all it really did was focus on disclosure as opposed to banning members of Congress from doing this. She talks about it in this next video. Take a look.
STOCK Act is a law that I wrote and passed that prohibits members of Congress and the executive branch and other powerful members of government from buying and selling stocks based on non-public information.
The measure passed after evidence emerged showing members of Congress making serious bank in the stock market. A study of data from the 1990s showed senators' trades outperformed the market by 12% per year. That crushes investment guru Warren Buffett, who only managed to beat the market by 2.5% that decade. Normal people's returns trailed by 1.5%.
We didn't realize that insider trading was happening every day by members of Congress because there was just no disclosure requirement. Now, when you buy or sell a stock that's worth more than $1,000, you have to disclose that purchase or sale within 30 days.
But even Gillibrand admits that the law didn't go far enough. Do you think there should be a prohibition on members of Congress owning stocks?
I do. My instinct is it would be far easier if members of Congress didn't even have the benefit of owning stocks.
You guys, how is that not insider trading when the Senate sees their investment grow by 12% and Warren Buffett's investment grows by 2.5%? Come on. How is that not insider trading? Come on. Like this is not okay. And here's the thing, Woz, in order for lawmakers to be barred from individual stocks, investing in individual stocks, you would need legislation, right? Are these people gonna wanna legislate themselves? Come on.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. And I do want to touch back on something you just said, Anna. This is not about these people being quote unquote evil or they're behaving in some weird way. This is how people operate when the rules are set up in such a way. I think specifically when it comes to us as progressives or people who self-identify as liberal, Democrats, whatever, oftentimes there's this idea that we're taking the moral stance. We're the moral, shield against the evil Republicans. And it can be a bit much sometimes, right? The moralizing and finger wagging. I don't think this is about morality. This is about, I can easily make a bunch of money. This is America. Only thing that matters here is money. I can't not do this. Like, it's easy to justify doing this for your family, for your own personal self-enrichment, for the people that come behind you. Like, you are incentivized to make as much money as you possibly can while you possibly can here in America. So they're just behaving in their best interest. They're not being weird or irrational or illogical. They're actually they're doing quite the opposite. They're doing exactly what logical people in their positions, not breaking the law, in an advantageous position of knowing what's gonna happen before it officially happens. That's important. So the only thing that we can do is legislate this stuff out to curtail the behavior, to make it so that there actually are tangible punishments for behaving this corruptly. Like, we can't say it enough. These people are trying to make the rules to referee the owners and the gatekeepers of society while also being enriched personally by those same people. It cannot work.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.